Hi guys, thanks for tuning to this episode of the Nick Egan Times. We have an awesome guest on this episode. We have James Roberts. James has represented his country at 4 World Championships, amongst others, as well as competing at 2 Paralympics. James started out his sporting career as a swimmer and progressed on to other Paralympic sports such as rowing and sitting volleyball. He competed for Great Britain at the 2008 Summer Paralympics in Beijing, finishing 5th in the trunk and arm classification in adaptive rowing. He also competed for Great Britain at the 2012 Summer Paralympics in London, finishing 8th in the sitting volleyball. Through all of that, James' story is inspirational, as James was born with a disability called femoral dysplasia. I believe that's how you say it. Welcome, James, and thanks for coming on my podcast.
Thank you very much, Nick, and thanks for the introduction.
How's it all been going over there?
Well, in terms of COVID, oof.
Yeah.
From a media perspective, ultimately our government's been slaughtered, but and I'm sorry for the pun in terms of that, but I think every government, no matter what they do, the media calls foul. So if they go left, the media says kind of, why did you not go right? I think the only saving grace that they can be commended on is the vaccinations. They put pretty much didn't put all their eggs in one basket. Is let's spread it out, and we'll before they've been validated, we'll take a bit of that, we'll take a little bit, and pretty much they've all been proven to be so far so good, been successful. So in terms of that, ultimately the media has not made a big deal about that, but it's positive, and the media has got a good knack of being negative. But other than that, spring is around the corner.
Yeah, no, it's exciting times for you over there. How have you personally handled it, like from a personal perspective, the pandemic, and how have you had to adapt to it?
Obviously, the business has had to evolve massively from being predominantly online, which mine was, to kind of having a hybrid version of utilizing Zoom for coaching, as opposed to in the past I was only using it for consultation. But for me, it was pretty, I won't say traumatic, but it was difficult to deal with, because this time of the year my family was in the Far East, so they were pretty upbeat and positive because they were being tested every single day. But when you haven't got control of your circumstances, ultimately, you think of worst case scenario. So it's kind of been an upward curve from about probably this time last year to not really fretting about not having sport and things like that. I kind of put it on the back burner. It's like, oh well, I have no control over whether or not I can train, whether or not I can compete. Oh well. It's a I imposed retirement years ago. This is retirement is out of my control, so I have to deal with it and bear with it. And ultimately, when the Olympics and the Paralympics in Tokyo happen, obviously Commonwealth sport hopefully will then become important again, and I'll be allowed to exercise because I'm in one of the national teams for that. So in terms of an upward trajectory, Nick, I think it's gone from pretty much doom and gloom, hopelessness, like pretty much everybody is. Well, my world is stopped, and the world is no longer the same, to pretty much, I think my weekdays are pretty much the same as they were before COVID. It's just the weekends are very much different because I'm not able to do sport, so I'm not able to somewhat be at peace a little bit, whereas it's kind of a weird one. It's like you don't think about anything, you just go on autopilot, and it was in the summer, it was very refreshing to be able to do that for a minuscule amount of time that it was allowed. that's probably the bonus that you've got down under. It's a bit warmer, so you can have outdoors. You can have indoor sports outdoors for a lot longer. Ours is pretty much, I think we were allowed to do it in, I think it was July, August. The weather was already starting to turn there. It was getting very autumnal, and it was starting to get cold. That particular day was warm, but it was starting to change.
Yeah, okay, cool. No, thanks for sharing that, your opinion. All right, let's just jump straight into it for the listeners. Who is James Roberts?
Beyond the accolades, I'm probably very, very down to earth. If I was to talk about what you mentioned in the introduction, I'd be very blasé about it. I would just kind of say, I've done this. It's no big deal. But I think, if I think of it from a realistic point of view, it is a big deal, because what I've been able to achieve in nearly 35 years, and somebody said this on an interview, on a podcast interview me recently, I'd achieved probably what some of them, almost twice my age, haven't been able to achieve. So I think it is very much a British thing to do, to be slip of a lip and kind of, well, it's not a big deal. It was hard, but okay, I'll get through it, and ultimately come through it the other side. But I think I need to be more like my dad's side of the family is American. It would be a big deal. It's like, let's get the trumpets out. I'm more towards the cautious side, because I don't want it to be thrown back in my face as, well, you're too egotistical and a little bit up yourself. So I'm more to be a little bit conservative. It's like, well, I did it. It was my choice to go down the sporting route, as opposed to some of my mother's family wanted me to get a real job, as they put it. So I listened, but I didn't take any notice, because ultimately I wanted to do what was best for me. And I think the saving grace my mum said to me as a teenager, as long as you put 100% effort into it, I'll back you. And I didn't always do that, but in terms of probably repaying that on the international stage, I couldn't do any higher.
Yeah, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing that. I personally believe you've done amazing, and I think it's inspirational. And yeah, I have nothing but respect for you. And yeah, I even respect you even more because of your humility. So yeah, man, you're doing great things.
I appreciate that, Nick.
You're welcome. Tell me about your family and life growing up in the UK.
Well, I actually didn't grow up in the UK. I didn't come back to the UK till I went to university. And
Wow.
When it comes to Paralympic sport, it's not unusual. There's a lot of people that have been grown up. Both my parents were in the forces. Where my story differs to a lot of what would you call it, military brats, is I didn't move around. I stayed in one location for 18, 19 years. But I think where it set me up to succeed was, the self-discipline, the respect, the honour in the craft. Ultimately, probably from about 11, 12 years old, I already knew consequences of my actions, because any wrong turn that I made had an impact on the family. So I probably grew up very, very quickly compared to maybe people the same age as me now. And I think sport did that as well, because I was told, when it would have been, by the then head coach of Welsh swimming at the Manchester Commonwealth Games in 2002, you started too late at 11. And obviously you've been in Australia heavily, very dominant in swimming. I disagreed. It's like, well, that might be the trajectory for most swimmers, but that's not me. And ultimately, this you'll love, because he down on after the speeches on that alone. My mum went out of her way to go down to the bottom of the spectator stand. I was mortified to start with. I was like, no, let's go back to my aunt's house, and let's not think about it. I want to get to represent my country, but we're not going to do it this way. And she took no notice. But I think because of my grandmother's no longer with us, it's like you need to put people in a position. So I don't think my mum could go back without having done some sort of breadcrumb laying. So I think for me, it's and I use it as content a little bit, but I since taken it away, because compared to some of the other things in my life, it's pretty minor. But it's having that initial spark with somebody in your corner. Happened to be my mum, and I ran with it. It's like, well, gone out of the way, didn't have to do that. Pretty much spent my entire life of when somebody said no, I'll prove you wrong. So that was no different when it came to that coach saying you started too late. It's like, okay, I did it, and within the space of 18 months, I was in our development program. So to kind of tread lightly. It wasn't as quick as I probably expected. I expected to probably do it a little bit quicker, but I was on people's radars because of, well, the internet was very in its infancy, like early 2000s. So picking up the phone, my mum did that. I spoke with, he is now the actual head of Paralympics GB, but he was head of British swimming on the Paralympic side then, and I think he'd probably be very, very, very happy to see that I fulfilled my potential that I had in swimming, but obviously I had to do it in another sport. So I think for me, it's been a kind of a winding road. We probably fast forward 2 years after being picked up by the national team. I was dropped when I had gone to university. And that was only a space, I'd only been at university 3 months. And I kind of went, well, what do I do now? I've never had sport in my life. Am I going to be a regular student come the new year? And unbeknownst to me, behind the scenes, my mum was speaking to the performance director for Disability Sport Wales. And if he'd have known sooner what was about to happen, he probably just stepped in sooner and kind of said, well, if you're dropped by British swimming, here is plan B, and here's another sport. It transpired a little bit later. I had a phone call with him. I'd ask a second opinion of my mum and say, well, what's your thoughts about me doing rowing? And I've since done a TEDx talk based on this initial conversation, and I started with it as, she doesn't remember saying it like this, but it's how I remember it in my head, is you can be very good or absolutely useless. So for me, it's a double positive. I could be good at it, we run with it, or I'm not good at it and I do something else. For somebody else that's not been brought up in a positive environment, it's a positive and a negative. And if they were to fail at that, I'm a failure, but etc., etc., etc. So for me, I was like a duck to water. I was and I obviously the only rowing that I ever seen was the Oxford and Cambridge boat race, and that was it. And I was a natural, and probably being in the fledgling sport as adaptive rowing was back then, Welsh Rowing took me under their wing, as we're going to put all the resources into you, James, that we get you to the Paralympics, and then obviously we can kind of go a little bit with a middle, I think a little bit subtly, as you know, with rugby, we like to beat the English anytime we can. It's probably the little middle finger to the English as well. Look, we put one resource into one person, and he made it. Obviously, it wasn't plain sailing. I nearly derailed at the last minute, but I had to up sticks and move down to the outskirts of London. The other person got injured, and I closed the door firmly behind me. And I never looked back. But it was always the case of, when it came to trial and selection in that sport, everybody else gets a second chance. I mess up one opportunity, and I think because I had pretty much the support of a perennial power within Paralympic sport in Wales, they were willing to take that to court. So it didn't get that far, but those are kind of the political things you got to deal with behind the scenes in sport.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, man, like I'm glad you stuck at it. Look at the goals you're kicking in life. Actually, can you share your disability? Talk to me about that and how that was growing up and your life with it.
Ooh, that's one for me, Nick. That's never been adversity because I was born with my disability. So for people to kind of picture it, it's a sort of a birth defect. And speaking to my prosthetist a couple of years ago, obviously he's got an acronym now. It's PFFD. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's a little bit easier than the other one.
Okay.
And with that, I've obviously probed a little bit more with family. It's like, well, it's no ordeal for me. Yes, there's been obviously stumbling blocks and roadblocks as I've grown older and have to adapt. But as a consequence of, like I said earlier, of the positive environment, I adapted. I became flexible. I thought of alternatives. If I can't do it like my friends and my peers, how do I overcome that hurdle and make it accessible to me? So I obviously asked, when you got pretty much nothing else to do in COVID times, I asked families, like, well, what was it particularly like for you, for me, for you when I was growing up? And obviously it was very difficult. My grandmother went to the extremes of, and I didn't hear this, but it's like in hearsay, my mum's referred it back to me. It's like, well, how's James going to cope? Is he going to end up in a wheelchair for the rest of his life? You know, like extremes. But I guess to the nature of the generation she came from, she hid that away from me, and I never knew that. And ultimately, she's no longer with us. And I relayed that story, I think before Christmas on Facebook Live, and I brought people to tears. And I even said on the post, I've only just learned this, so for me, it's kind of, I brush it off quite easily. It's like, well, it's no big deal. I've learned that it was pretty horrendous for her because, well, you only got to go back 60, 70 years. I would have been in different education to start with. And speaking to one of my coaches in wheelchair basketball, he was in that said education, so it was no education. So you pretty much set up to fail from an academic standpoint. And then from a mom, it was very difficult. And as a single parent as well, people would ask her, well, how do you cope with James, the dog, the cat, work life as well? And I think, well, as British people do, they just get on with it. And I can't commend her enough for that, because if it was anything to give me an opportunity, I had it. If she said no, I think that's the only person I would listen to when it comes down to that. If it's a definite no, okay, you've lost that battle, give up. So I wouldn't be like some of these kids, like be persistent as I want this. If it was no one or two times, okay, that's fine. I accept the decision, and I think the tenacity to never give up. I think it's left with me. I think because my dad wasn't so much in the picture, I've had strong women around me, be it my grandmother, my mum, my aunts, and I think it's that stubbornness to not take. Can I swear?
Yeah, you can say.
To take no shit. Of, well, you say no, I say why not, and you see a problem, I see a solution. And I think that's where a lot of people, and this is probably why I get irritated nowadays, because it'd be like people will bring up problems. It's like, oh, I've got this issue. and whoever shouts loudest is generally heard. So I'll probably join it a little bit, but it will be, here's a problem, here is a solution, not I've been hard done by, and play whatever card I have because I've been brought up better than that. It's an asset in my view because it's adversity. It's something difficult that you've learned from. That's a trump card, and well, pardon the pun for the politician, but that's a superpower. That's an advantage. You shouldn't leverage it to make somebody feel bad. You should leverage it as empowerment, as this is what I have had to deal with despite setbacks, be it I'm mixed race. So at the time we're living in, as I stand, I'm in no man's land, because if I'm in one camp, I'll obviously be slated by one half of the race, of the human race, and then obviously if I stand in one other camp, I'll be deemed something else. So I'm probably going to go down the route of, I'm not sitting on the fence to be not make an opinion. I'm sitting on the space because ultimately you're creating a divide, and I shouldn't have to choose. And it's probably the same with able-bodied sport versus disabled. Why is sports that's got lots and lots of money being able to play, and the people that probably need it more from a psychological perspective are kind of being left to be spent in the wilderness? So it's probably something I'm going to push more as well. I can't get away from who I am in terms of being mixed race, having a disability. Why not showcase it for good? Because people like to point out, well, you're very motivational and very inspirational, but it's not moving the needle, in my estimations. So I think I need to probably up my game a little bit more when it comes from that side of things. So it's, how do I do that? It's probably doing more things of talking about it.
Yeah, definitely, and you're definitely good at that. You can definitely tell a good story, and you're very good, yeah, man. Like, it interests me. Tell me about the World Championships and the two Paralympics. What was it like going to them, and the process and everything to do with that?
Well, we used my very first World Championships. I was very naive. I will almost say naive. I was very... What would I kind of word it as? Because I'd never been in that environment, I didn't know what to expect. So I'm kind of like this naive kid of, well, I don't know what to expect. I'm not going to be afraid of it, and let me just climb the ladder. So it was learning as I went along. I obviously had people that I could rely on and kind of say, well, what is it like? Further you go up the totem pole. And that first World Championship never happened, nearly never happened, because the first time I went for British trials, they said, oh, you're good, but don't worry about the World Championships this year. I was like, that's a bit defeatist. In terms of, I didn't say that to them, but in terms of that's the high. To this point is the highest I've ever been. I've never been. Why am I going to turn down an opportunity? It's staring me straight in the face. So I got back in the car with my performance director. It's like, I'm going to that World Championships. It's up to. I don't know how. I don't know by whatever means, but I need to find a partner. I said, but yeah, that's not my problem. And obviously he found somebody that they disregard. They kind of didn't really deal with. It's like, well, you're not good enough, and really didn't give him a second chance. And they obviously now live in New Zealand, but they were never given the opportunity for whatever reason, because of, well, the head coach then was half Australian as well, but they had a kind of picture in their head as well. What should a Paralympic rower look like based on the Olympic model? Got to be 6 foot plus and pretty much built like a tank. But if you look at any of the pictures of when I've competed, people are all my height and weigh generally about the same size. So they're probably about 5'8", 5'9", average height, and probably about average weight. And pretty much I didn't live up to stereotypes either. So I obviously faced that going through, but I wasn't going to say no. It happened. I was lucky it was on home soil, so you can't get any better than First World Championships in your backyard. We did okay. I finished in 5th. I probably threw my toys out the pram afterwards because I wasn't really happy with the performance of the boat, but you live and you learn. I was 20 years old and pretty much still acting like a teenager, and pointing fingers as well as somebody else is at fault because of this, that and the other. I probably could point out different things and kind of say, well, you're at fault, James, but that's 15 years on. If we fast forward to the Paralympics, that was probably as a 14, 15-year-old, that was everything that I ever wanted from back in the days when one of my coaches in swimming came over to me one day and said, well, what is your thoughts on doing disability sport? I was not pleased because at that point I'd only ever done able-bodied sport. I'm thinking, well, I know in reality I can only compete just about with people that are of similar ability, but I still beat some of them. So I wasn't too impressed, but I messaged her son a couple of months ago and said, oh, can you send this to your mum as appreciation, because you kind of started the ball rolling to put the idea of, well, you might actually make a success of it by going into a discipline that it's your disability is now you're based on your ability and you're not going to be shunned for it. But I think because me being a teenager, I've been rebellious, it's like, well, I don't agree with what you say, but we ran with it, and that kind of what transpired to go into the Commonwealth and then probably asking, and then the rest is, as you say, history. But like I said earlier in an episode about the Beijing Games was probably the harder of the two because of politics a little bit. The final trials, I didn't turn up, and I think everybody was aghast as well. Who's this person? This isn't James. James doesn't know in tournament like that, because I'd wiped the floor. Wiped the floor of my competition that entire season running up to it, and it was like no contest in training camps. It was pretty much signed, sealed, delivered. And well, I know why I didn't perform now. I made a big deal about it. I put it on a pedestal, and psychologically when you do that, you're going to set yourself up to fail because it's the big event. But if I'd have treated it no differently than every World Championships trials leading up to it, I would have performed. So I lost. They were going to close the door. We looking at doing legal action. I was willing to. I was this close, or people can't see my fingers, but I was very, very close from throwing away my degree, and people will probably be very aghast by that. I'd done the initial thing, well, you expect me to move tomorrow? Well, obviously I'm going to have to forego university. So university was very accommodating to allow me to move. I only had to come back for exams and one presentation. So I can't be... I'm truly grateful for them to have confidence in an aspiring. I hadn't got it yet, but the conviction other people showed me, like belief, is like, well, okay, now I need to deliver. I pretty much, like I said earlier, other person got injured. Okay, here's my opportunity. I'm going to seize upon it. It's my place, and the door is firmly shut. And I don't think he got another look in. He did the following season, but he wasn't good enough, and it was the assistant coach who became that coach. He kind of said, well, there's no point putting him against James because he was above average, and I was really motoring in the 2009 season. So I guess it's like, well, the only enemy James has got is the clock. And any sport that's got a clock, you want it to finish as quickly as possible. So I actually raced the fastest I've ever done in a boat the next day. I just put it out to my mind as well. It's my place, and we just need to keep going. Because 2009 was my last season in rowing. It didn't end as well as I would have liked, but I don't think many sports people or persons in general get a ride out on that white horse.
Yeah, definitely. That's great story, great insights. What inspires you daily?
Ooh, that's a great question. In terms of I say other people, because I think everybody are their worst critics, their worst enemy. Like I said, a lot of people say I'm very inspirational, I'm very motivational. Somebody actually commented on an old video I did today, and it's like, and I actually opened up as like, well, I'm not perfect. I do have my frailties, I do have my forthcomings, I do have moments of adversity, and I do have moments that I do fail. I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be, but being able to showcase to other people you're not as bad as you say you are. And I had a consultation with somebody today. It's like, well, what did he say? Obviously, not to the extreme of I'm a failure, but it was like words to that effect. It's like, well, stop there, because if you say it enough, you're going to start acting like a failure. I don't see you a failure. You had the balls to speak to me and jump on a Zoom. It's not easy to do that for a lot of people. People do say to me, well, how do you do it? It's like, well, I lived kind of a sport bubble. I loved it. I loved the attention. I've pretty much been like that since I was a kid. To not to the detriment, but in terms of family we're bringing up, it's like, well, stop looking in the mirror. But in terms of, it doesn't bother me in terms of putting on, I wouldn't even say it's a persona. It probably what used to be in sport, it was a persona, because I was very confident in that environment. But outside of it, I wasn't so self-assured. And I think that's what drives me, is to kind of say, well, it's okay to be imperfect to other people. We can strive for I can't speak. We can strive for perfection. Ultimately, as American football coach once said, we can't ascertain perfection, but we can get down more close, which is excellence. And if I can get people to be, come out of the shadows of mediocrity and being average, I'm doing fairly well, because if people up their standards pretty much around the globe, we have a better world. We're not trying to belittle each other. Virtually much what social media is. Facebook, I want to have my opinion, but is it really warranted? And that's how I was brought up. If you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say it at all. So it's trying to instill that to people as, you're going to get your haters. That's one way that you're doing fairly well, because pretty much people are coming out the woodwork to try and bring you back down to their level.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more with you. Haters gonna hate. If you were 18 again and you could do anything differently individually, what would you change?
Ooh, 18 all over again and change. Well, I always said I would never go into team sport. Would I change the decision I made? No. I'll probably change my way of thinking, because it takes a lot more a cohesion and team chemistry to make things work, because you can have pretty much fall out instantly and everything tumble down, whereas individually it is I commended it and made a big deal about it, but it's very lonely. It's a very lonely place, and pretty much if you don't succeed and you don't have people around you, a lot of bad things can transpire. So I think what I would say to myself as an 18-year-old is you're going to have a pretty good career. So I would say enjoy a bit more. Enjoy the moment, because that's one thing I missed. I focused about getting from A to B as quickly as possible, which is pretty much like anything in life nowadays. Is I want to have something as a click of the button. I didn't actually enjoy every aspect of it, of soaking it all in and actually enjoying it while I had it. And yes, I have memories, yes, I have pictures, but they're not. Some of them are not vivid. They're not like a film that I could just close my eyes and I replay it all back. It's just like snapshots and little highlights. So that's probably what I would like to do is to enjoy the moments more so than I did.
Yeah, definitely. Great insights again, my friend. What would you tell anyone if you could give them any advice?
Give any advice? Obviously, don't listen to the haters. Would be one, but in terms of actually something that's a real piece of advice, trust your gut, because your gut won't go far wrong. If it's something bad, your body will let you know. If it's something good, you got that euphoric sense of, well, this feels right. I think the body is a wonderful thing that I don't think enough people actually trust in. I know I talked about in the episode of asking other people. I've been called out on that probably more times than none recently as well. You own it. You make a decision, and you use the sword, you die by the sword. If you make a mistake, you have two choices. You wither and play the victim, or you learn from it. And pretty much a lot of things that I've done, probably through COVID times, I've thrown caution to the wind, very much like I did as probably that 15-year-old. And then obviously that first World Championship is like, well, I don't know what's ahead of me. Come get me.
Yeah, wow. I definitely agree with you too on trusting your gut. I think, it is a powerful thing and you should always trust that, because generally it's always right. So yeah, couldn't agree more with you with that. James, thanks for coming on my podcast. I do appreciate it. I wish you all the best for the trajectory of your life and everything you're doing. I think you got such a bright and wonderful future ahead. And yeah, man, you're just a great person, and yeah, inspirational. You're humble, and you're definitely good at talking. So yeah, there's just so many aspects of you that just makes you a great person that you are.
I appreciate that, Nick, and thanks again for having me on your show.
Pleasure, mate. Take care. That's it. It's all done, my friend.
Okay.
So what will happen? Yeah. What I was going to say is I've got a few episodes I've got to upload first in a couple of weeks. So this will probably I'll upload it within probably the next month, give or take. But yeah, I'll keep you posted. I'll email you the links and we're all good to go. What are you up to anyway tonight? Over there. Start
winding down now for the day. I think I mentioned the guy today in the consultation call. I've never actually been so not relieved, but happy not to sell, because he's like, I'm not in a good place right now. I was like, okay, but this is what I want you to take away from today: is you need to do this.
Yeah, okay. What about everything else, Dennis?
I think overall, family's all right. All the people in the UK, in fact, my family had their first vaccine, so it's just me now. So whenever that will be, in terms of, I think they're doing it by age now. So I think they were in their 40s. So if I get it before my birthday, and no ill effects from it. So it's well, I can't complain when you hearing of some countries. It's quite funny when we look to Europe though, because they're quite struggling. It's like, well, Brexit's a good thing, because it's like, well, we wouldn't be able to kind of go out on our own and say, well, we want this vaccine. We probably both had to wait and then be in the kind of vacuum that they're having the problem, and ultimately pretty much, well, it was like nearly put itself a nuclear bomb because of the trade agreement. It's like, well, Ireland wasn't happy, Northern Ireland wasn't happy. It's like, well, why are you doing that just because? And they end up not using it for the older population anyway. It's like, well, we'd happily keep it and we'd use it. And then obviously we'd be, well, I think way ahead of most countries in terms of vaccinating the population. You know, in terms of that, I can't commend the government highly in terms of that efficacy, in terms of its, well, we're gonna, even though we don't got the stats, we'll go with that one. We'll buy up as much as we can for the population, and obviously every country after that has kind of followed suit. But they like to rewind back to, well, they should have done this like Australia closed the borders, New Zealand closed the borders. Like they like to showcase like other parts of the Commonwealth. It's like, well, this Commonwealth country did it like this. I know a coach in the West Indies, they can't even leave the house. So it's like, well, you've got your civil liberties. You can go to you know, pick up medication. You can go to the store to get food. You've got warm shelter. What you've got to moan about? It could be far worse than being in maybe one of these Middle Eastern countries or Africa, and you might die because they haven't got the resources. So I think some people haven't. They're in their own little world, I think sometimes. It's like, but I think that's because of where I've been brought up. I don't think it's the same as some people. It's, if you say, gotta go inside, I didn't expect it to still be here 12 months on, but in terms of, okay, how long? Obviously it's been hard sometimes. I think that's for everybody, because you're not designed to do that. But in terms of overall things, not too bad. How about you?
Yeah, good. It's been a grind the last 2 years, obviously. Nearly, even before the pandemic, just working, doing the podcast. Yeah, so it's been good. But like, I get to meet amazing people, which, you know, like yourself. Like, I enjoy it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the future more than anything.
Well, I think I think for podcasts it's made it easier because you can tie somebody down. It's like, where you guys got to go?
Exactly.
It could be the highlight of your week.
Yeah, you're trapped. You got to talk. But yeah, no, man, everything's good. I'm looking forward to getting the vaccine myself, so I can go travel. Hopefully, get out of the UK, can come see you. Just want to travel, like it's one of my passions. So yeah, I'm hoping. I believe in
pay that. I don't know how. tonight. Well, I know they got the quarantine, hotel quarantine. But I don't know whether or not that. I don't know if we're going to bring in that passport vaccine, passport. What do they call it? Vaccination passport. I don't know if we're one of the countries that are going to do it because the medical stuff. So there was no point because somebody's eventually